Good morning again, everyone. Welcome to Mount Carmel Bible Church. I'm Pastor Richard. Those of you watching, wherever you're watching, glad you're here. All right, like I said, we had a lot of things going on this past few weeks. We've talked a lot about going out and sharing the faith, and because of that, this one kind of ties in a little bit and in a different direction. A lot of people are very familiar with the Daniel and the lion's den from Daniel 6. But a lot of times when we read the Bible, especially when we're reading the stories that we know so well, we kind of just glaze over them. We want to say, oh, I know this chapter, read, and go on to the next chapter. You know, we might not study these chapters that we're familiar with as well as we should. And I wanted to take this opportunity to really dig into this story, because there's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of information in here that isn't just God protected Daniel from the lion. So we all know the story, and we all leave out parts. And you go to other sermons, you might just not even hear parts of the story. So we wanted to highlight a few of them. It starts in Daniel 6, 1 through 3, and then goes on. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom. The satraps are like governing areas, or governing bodies of people that are in charge of regions or cities. So that's what a satrap is. And over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps should give account, so that the king might not suffer any loss. Then this Daniel became distinguished above the other high officials and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Then the high officials and satraps sought to find grounds of complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom, but they could find no grounds for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful and no error or fault was found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any grounds to complain against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God." So that just sets up the story, right? We all know that's saying, okay, the king liked Daniel. He thought highly of him. Daniel was a good worker and a solid individual, and the king respected him. But that caused animosity with the other rulers, the other officials. So they were starting to plot against Daniel because of greed. They wanted to take the power away from Daniel. They wanted to take his authority away because they wanted that position. So it goes on. All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps and counselors and governors all agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document, so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, King Darius signed the documents and injunctions. So what happened is they knew they could get Daniel with this trick. And they had to play upon the king's own, his high standings. They knew his pride could be affected by them. So they said, "Great king, sign this document, so no one can praise anybody but you for 30 days. And the king took that and signed the document. When Daniel knew that the documents had been signed, he went to his house, where he had a window in the upper chamber open towards Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before God, as he had done previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petitions and pleas before God. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, "O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who had made petitions to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" The king answered said, "The thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked." Then they answered and said before the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, king, or your injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day." They got him. They knew he was going to pray 3 times a day, as he has always done. This was not a secret. Daniel wasn't hiding his belief. He wasn't hiding his faith. He was standing firm. He didn't care who heard about it. He didn't care that he was going to violate this petition that the king signed. He was faithful to God first. Then the king, when he had heard these words, was such distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. And he labored until the sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, "Know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed." Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. And the king declared to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. The king knew he was tricked. The king knew that he was set up and that Daniel was going to be punished because of his failure. It's clear by the text that the king loved Daniel. He was going to set him up over his kingdom, over all the officials. And when it found out that Daniel was going to be put in the lion's den because of what he did, he had remorse. He was sorrowful. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He didn't want any disturbances. He didn't want anybody bothering him throughout the night. It's clear that he was upset by what was going to happen to his friend. Then, at break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Note that hope. That moment where the king was concerned but had wonder. He knew Daniel served God, and he knew by the text that he had some sort of belief in God himself. He called him the living God. He knew Daniel was faithful, and he was hopeful that what was going to happen happened. Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent an angel and shut the lion's mouth, and that they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king. I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den. And no kind of harm was found on him because he had trusted in God. The important part of that little section there, I feel, was Daniel was faithful to God, but also faithful to the king. He has done no harm to the king. He didn't try to trick him. He didn't try to be deceitful in any way. He was a good Christian. Well, not quite Christian at the time, but he was a good, faithful person to the Lord. And by following the Lord's guidance and being a good person, it showed. He was faithful to the king, God first, and then the king second. And the king commanded that those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions. They, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. That's the part that a lot of the children's stories kind of glaze over. That's the part that you don't see in the cartoons. All the people that were involved in the deception of the king. Oh, there we go. All the people that were involved in the deception of the king, the ones who spied on Daniel, knew that he was going to be praying, they all worked together to deceive the king and to get rid of Daniel. The king knew this. The king realized what had happened, that he was deceived, that he had malicious people working for him, and he gathered them all up and threw them in the lion's den. The part that most people get concerned about is it says they, their children, and their wives. Why would he throw children in? We've got to remember, like we discussed in the previous lessons, children in the Bible doesn't mean children like him, although I wouldn't mind throwing him in the den of lions sometimes. It means the children of the people that we're talking about. The people that were the satraps and the governors and the people that were set in authority were not middle-aged men or young men. They were wise men. They were older men. They were experienced. Probably at some point they were businessmen or put in other authority. They were older people. And their children were older. As by hints, by the text, it says their children and their wives. Children don't have wives. Little children don't have wives. But younger men do. Right? So it wasn't children that were thrown into the den of lions. It was children. The sons of the politicians. The sons of the people in charge. Because they were all probably living in the same households, conspiring together, being deceitful, spying on Daniel, coming together to witness that Daniel was praying when he wasn't supposed to be. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwelled in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the Lord, before God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. King Darius was converted. King Darius knew and appreciated God, the God of Daniel. He saw the faith in Daniel. He saw the consistency in Daniel. He saw the trust that Daniel had in God, and he saw God respond. He saw that miracle. The lions were shut. Their mouths were shut. Daniel was protected. all night because of his faith, because of his enduring love for God. That affected King Darius. He delivered and received and he works signs and wonders in heaven and earth, and who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions, so that Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. This story has a lot of layers to it. The obvious ones we can see. Daniel was true to God. He was a good man. He was an honest man. He cared for the king. He cared for his work. And he prayed to God constantly, 3 times a day, without fail. He never gave in to peer pressure. He saw that the documents were signed. He knew what the consequences were if he did pray. But he didn't yield. He didn't hesitate. He didn't put it off. He did like he always did. He went to his room that he set apart in his house, opened the windows to face Jerusalem, and he prayed like he always did. Because God was number one in his life. He knew what was going to happen, and he continued anyway. We know that God was true to Daniel. He protected him. And we knew God punished his enemies. Because those people that were after Daniel weren't just after Daniel. They were after his relationship with God. If Daniel would have stopped praying for 30 days, they would have won. If they put him in the lion's den, they would have won. But God intervened. God softened the heart of King Darius through his relationship with Daniel, so that gave the king the wisdom to understand that he was manipulated by those people that were out to get Daniel, and God invoked the punishment. If God can protect Daniel from the lions, what do you think he's going to do to us? If we follow God the way that Daniel followed God, I'm sure the protections are going to be there just as they were for Daniel. Something to keep in mind. I already went over this, but why the children? Again, the children weren't children. They were adults. They tricked the king. They attacked Daniel's faith. They knew what they were doing for selfish reasons. So we need to have faith and protect our relationship with God. Because if we protect our relationship with God by gathering, going to church, by reading the Bible, by praying, by working on our faith and our strength with God, then He's going to protect us. He's going to guide us. He'll be more involved in our lives. He's already involved with our lives. Sometimes we don't see it or feel it because we're not looking for it. We're being distracted by the world. Nothing can harm us if God is with us. And God is always, always with us. No matter where we are, no matter how alone we feel, He's right there. With faith and trust in the Lord, even the hungry beasts bow to God's command. And I had some other thoughts about this. Besides all these little layers to the story. We've talked in the past few weeks about sharing our life with others, sharing our faith with others, reaching out to others by telling them our stories. When we had those come to God moments, when we finally gave ourselves to the Lord, to evangelize to others, to share hope with other people. Daniel did that. He didn't go out and preach at this point. He didn't make a big deal of his faith. He didn't tell others that they had to pray too. He simply led a good life. He simply followed the Lord and became what the Lord was looking for. By being a good person, by being an honorable person, a trustworthy person, not one that was deceiving the king, not one that was trying to look out for himself, by being the kind of person that's described in the Bible, the kind of person that Jesus was teaching us to be. The king saw it. The king saw the faith that he had in God and became a follower of God himself. Now, many of you know I'm in the Air Force. Before that, years ago, I was in the Coast Guard. And I was stationed up in Maine. Terribly cold up there. It's called the vacation state, right? Because beautiful place to visit. Beautiful. You don't want to live there. It's cold. Very cold. But I had a boss. His name was John Ballard. He had a unique style of leadership. After the working day was done, we were supposed to stay on base in case there was an emergency, if someone needed us, then we'd jump on a boat and go out and help them, right? Well, working day was done, we had our time to ourselves. We'd eat dinner, watch TV, work out, play games, whatever we wanted to do, right? We just couldn't leave base. Well, John would, after dinner, go out and continue working in the boat. He didn't tell us we had to. If we were painting a section of the boat, he'd just go out there and keep working until dark. Well, after just a couple of days of him doing that, the entire crew was doing that. Not because we were told to, but because we were following his lead. He didn't make us do anything extra. He just went out and did extra himself. And because he was doing that, we started following. Now we can apply that to what Daniel did here. Daniel followed the Lord. And in following the Lord, doing what was right, he became a leader. John Ballard wasn't the greatest leader that I've known, but because he was true and honest and did what he was supposed to do, the rest of us kind of fell in line. So if we can be Christians, we can follow the Lord and be an example or a light into this world, other people are going to notice that. And just maybe they'll join in as well. We all know this world is kind of on a downhill slope, to put it nicely. There's people all over that really hate Christians. They really hate God. They want to do us harm. But if we can stand fast, like Daniel did, the Lord's going to protect us from those people. And just maybe, other people are going to notice that and start following as well. God has everything planned out. He has everything in control. He loves us and shows us all the time. Maybe we can start following him a little better, listening to him a little more, work on our faith a lot more. The best way to do that, of course, is to gather, pray, Study the Bible. Sounds like a broken record, right? Almost every week I talk about that. If you're spending 10 minutes a day reading the Bible, bump it up. Go to 20 minutes. If you're spending 2 or 3 times a day praying, you can do a lot better than that. Don't just pray, thank you for getting me here safely. Thank you for a beautiful day. Thank you for every gift that you've given me. All the time I have with my loved ones. Thank you for that annoying little dog that runs under my feet every time I get home. Thank you for the kid that sometimes listens. Thank you for everything. Because we remind ourselves that everything we have is a gift from God. We'll appreciate it more. We'll love it more. We'll care for it more. And that's important. Let's go to Lord in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us all here together to hear your message. Thank you for all the time you've given us, all the opportunities you've given us, all the knowledge you've given us. Continue to work on us. Continue to bring us closer to you. Continue to use us to help others come closer to you. Give us the opportunities and the wisdom and the voice and the character to share your love and your word with others. You pursued us until we caved and became yours. Please don't give up on the rest. Help use us to your will. Help us to get stronger in our faith and stronger in our relationship with you. Help us share the word with others, ones in our families, ones in our communities, and beyond. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for all the many gifts you've given us. Continue to minister to our health and our financial problems and every other problem that we have. You know us. You know what we're going through. Continue to guide us on your path so that we can be with you in heaven someday. We love you, Lord. We just want to follow you. We just want to be with you. We just want to know that you're with us. And in Jesus' name, amen.